Sean McDermott, very successful there. Not successful enough. He's out. Joe Brady was promoted from offensive coordinator. He's going to be their new head coach. And it seems like they're having a good time in Buffalo, that things are vibing well. Obviously, familiarity there. Josh Allen and the personnel there, like Joe Brady, they are pumped that he was able to ascend in this way. But the expectations are tremendously high for Joe Brady in year one. Does it feel like the Bills are Super Bowl or bust for you? Evan always says Super Bowl or bust. What's the bust? I don't think Joe Brady will be one and done.
Yeah, me
but
neither.
The only measure of success for them is getting to a Super Bowl. Maybe not winning it, but they have to get there.
And can you imagine for that franchise if they finally, after decades, get back and it's the same result as they had during the 4 that they lost? That would
tormented.
Be brutal. I don't wish that on anybody, but especially that fan base. The bust part for me, I struggle with here because you had a head coach who was there for 98 games with Josh Allen, and that wasn't good enough to be able to let him keep his job. They felt they needed a new voice in the room. They felt that they needed somebody to lift this team over the moments where they come so close in the playoffs, but they don't get where they want to go, which is the ultimate goal of getting to the Super Bowl. So through that logic, you're putting all of that pressure onto Joe Brady saying, you're not just next up, but if you don't take us to where we want to go, which is getting past where Sean McDermott got you, the AFC Championship, getting to the Super Bowl, then all of this was for nothing. All of this was for nothing. The moves were for nothing. It didn't yield the best outcome, which is getting to the Super Bowl. So I know, I would say of any head coach, of any of the new head coaches, he has the most pressure on him, but I don't see the bust as, you don't get to the Super Bowl this year, you're done. They're not firing him. Are you kidding me?
Not going to happen.
He gets this job with the sign-off of the quarterback because this is the quarterback who hears him in his headset every single play for the entirety of the NFL season. Josh had to be comfortable making this happen, and he had to have some confidence that Joe would be the one to get them over the hump. But if it doesn't happen in year one, it would be lunacy to think that he would get fired.
But a lot of people are thinking it could happen in year one. Our Dominique Foxworth, ESPN NFL analyst, and of course, the podcast, The Dominique Foxworth Show, isn't so sure about that. Here's what he had to say.
They are taking their offensive coordinator and making him the head coach. Their issue was defense, so they brought in a defensive coordinator who has not been an NFL defensive coordinator. They're making a lot of changes. They've committed a lot of draft capital to get DJ Moore into the program, a guy who is towards the end of his prime and has had some injuries in recent years. Like, there's a situation that this team may not be all that good, especially to start the season. And then you look at the games that they have to start the season. Texans, Lions, Chargers, Patriots, Rams. I just think the situation there, if you get off to a bad start, it could potentially implode.
That is a brutal start to the season, Courtney, for the Buffalo Bills, and especially for Joe Brady, a first-time head coach. As Dominique Foxworth mentioned, at the Texans versus the Lions versus the Chargers versus the Patriots, then you go to L.A. to face the Rams. I don't know if there's a more difficult start to the 2026 schedule for any team than there is for the Buffalo Bills. They went 12-5 last season. They were second in the AFC East. They have an 85% chance to make the playoffs. But when you look at that stretch, that's going to tell. I know early on teams are finding their sea legs, so it's hard to really judge a team those first 5 weeks of the season the way we do the last 5 weeks of the season. Obviously, there's a cadence to the schedule. But if they weather that storm that early, Courtney, where they're coming out of that 5-game stretch with a winning record and they look really polished, and you think, wow, this is how they start. Imagine how they could finish.
Yep.
That could really change people's opinions of the Buffalo Bills one way or the other, positively or negatively, depending on that 5-week stretch.
The only other team that came to mind as having that murderer's row to open the season of opponents would be Washington, because they've got the 2 NFC opponents on the road. They go to Philly, they go to Dallas, and then you welcome the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks home in week 3. No big deal. That's also very hard. But as we focus in on this Buffalo Bills team, and I mentioned the word 98, so that was 98 wins that Sean McDermott had. 98 wins, didn't get it done in 168 regular season, or 164 total games. That's a long time to demonstrate a body of work that, in the eyes of ownership and the Pagulas, in the eyes of that fan base, a lot of fans.
Bills Mafia, let me ask you something that nobody around the NFL seems ready to answer. What happens when a team that's been knocking on the Super Bowl door for years decides that almost isn't good enough anymore? That's exactly where the Buffalo Bills are right now. The pressure has completely changed. It's not just about winning the AFC East anymore. It's not even just about making another playoff run. The conversation has become crystal clear. This team has to get to the Super Bowl. And now that Joe Brady is the head coach, every single decision, every game, every fourth down call, every adjustment will be judged through one question. Can he finally get Josh Allen over the hump? That's the reality, and honestly, I love it, because championship teams embrace pressure. They don't run from it. The discussion in the media is already heating up. Some analysts believe Buffalo is entering a Super Bowl or bust season, while others argue Joe Brady deserves time because changing head coaches is a massive transition. But one thing everyone agrees on is this: Josh Allen is entering another prime stretch of his career, and the Bills cannot waste it. Now here's where things get really interesting, Bills Mafia. Imagine if Brandon Beane looked at this roster and said, "We're not taking any chances protecting our franchise quarterback." That's where the name Kevin Zeitler enters the conversation. Let me be very clear before anybody jumps to conclusions. There is no confirmed report that Buffalo is negotiating with Kevin Zeitler. This is a football discussion based on roster construction and veteran depth. But if a proven guard like Zeitler were available under the right circumstances, would he make sense for a team trying to maximize Josh Allen's Super Bowl window? Absolutely. That's a conversation worth having. Think about what happened last season. Josh Allen battled through injuries around him. The offensive line dealt with adversity. Backup tackles had to play meaningful snaps, and yet Josh still found ways to keep Buffalo alive. That's what elite quarterbacks do. But Bills Mafia, do we really want him having to play superhero every January? Or would you rather see him standing behind one of the strongest offensive lines in football, with clean pockets and more time to punish defenses? That's why offensive line depth matters. It isn't flashy, it doesn't sell as many jerseys as a star receiver, but championships are won because quarterbacks stay upright when the season is on the line. And that's why Kevin Zeitler is such an intriguing hypothetical fit. He's been one of the league's most respected interior offensive linemen for years. Tough, physical, experienced. The kind of veteran who understands playoff football. A player like that doesn't need headlines. He brings stability, he brings leadership, he brings confidence to everyone around him. Imagine Joe Brady calling aggressive downfield concepts, knowing his interior protection is even stronger. Imagine James Cook running behind an offensive line loaded with experience. Imagine Josh Allen having that extra split second to find DJ Moore, Dalton Kincaid, or Keon Coleman downfield. That's the type of hidden advantage that changes playoff games. Now, let's go back to Joe Brady, because that's the biggest story here. He isn't replacing just any coach. He's following one of the winningest coaches in franchise history. Sean McDermott brought Buffalo back to relevance, but ownership decided that getting close wasn't enough anymore. That tells you everything about where this franchise believes it belongs. The expectations are enormous, but honestly, they should be. When you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you don't measure success by playoff appearances, you measure it by Lombardi trophies. That's the standard now, and Bills Mafia should embrace it instead of fearing it. The opening stretch of the schedule won't make life easy either. Analysts are already calling it one of the toughest starts in the NFL. Houston, Detroit, the Chargers, New England, the Rams. That's a brutal opening stretch, but maybe that's exactly what this football team needs. If Buffalo comes through those games with a winning record, confidence will explode. The entire AFC will realize these Bills aren't rebuilding under a new head coach, they're evolving. And sometimes the toughest road is exactly what reveals how strong a team really is. Here's what excites me the most. Joe Brady already has something most first-year head coaches never get. He has complete trust from his quarterback. Josh Allen knows his system. Josh Allen wanted continuity. That chemistry gives Buffalo a head start that many teams simply don't have. Add smart roster moves, continued growth from the offensive weapons, and maybe another experienced veteran if the opportunity presents itself, and suddenly this team looks even more dangerous than it did a year ago. So here's my message to Bills Mafia. Don't be afraid of the expectations. Welcome them. This franchise isn't chasing respect anymore, it's chasing history. If Kevin Zeitler ever became a realistic veteran option to strengthen the offensive line, I'd absolutely trust Brandon Beane to evaluate that move, not because Buffalo is desperate, but because great organizations never stop looking for ways to protect their biggest investment, Josh Allen. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you bring Kevin Zeitler to Buffalo if the opportunity became real, or do you believe the current offensive line is already strong enough for a Super Bowl run? Drop your opinion in the comments, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because Bills Mafia this season feels different. Go Bills!